And we continue at 2:06 in the afternoon. It's the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wings in Culver City.
John, this morning, Governor Gavin Newsom announced that he is suing the Trump administration over tariffs, and he's very mindful about it.
And so we are here very mindful of the anxiety that this has imposed on all of you, and very mindful of our role and responsibility at this moment, not to be bystanders.
He is doing everything he can to attach himself to every national story.
That's all he wants to do. He has no interest in what's actually going on in the state of California.
But it just didn't feel big enough.
And what's crazy is the people running to replace him are largely running on federal issues, so they don't care either.
Should be the first question at any debate for people running for governor in 2026. Do you actually care about what's going on in California?
Well, the answer is no, but they won't say that. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. Earlier this week, there was an article that dropped in the New York Post that was clearly planted by those who are close to the new Democratic leader in the House, Hakeem Jeffries. They say that Democrats in the House of Representatives, in their caucus, are frustrated and growing increasingly frustrated with Nancy Pelosi for not calling it quits. She's now 85 years old and been in the House for decades. After she stepped down as Speaker, I think most of them assumed that she would be retiring from Congress in short order. However, she's shown no interest in that. And according to the New York Post, she's also not being quiet. Apparently, she's voicing her opinion right and left in the Democratic caucus meetings, and she's making it impossible for Hakeem Jeffries to be the new leader of the caucus. Democrats want her to say sayonara. They want her to retire and go be an ambassador somewhere if a Democratic president were to be elected, go back to San Francisco, eat Ghirardelli chocolate, maybe retire and go to Florida, whatever. They don't care. They just don't want her there. But according to her, she has no plans to leave anytime soon. Not only does she have a year and a half left on her current term, she's filed paperwork to run for re-election. There are Democrats in San Francisco who have been elected to state and local office who have been angling to replace her for quite some time. But if she won't retire, if she won't go anywhere, there's no opportunity for them to move up. Well, one Democrat in San Francisco has said, all right, enough's enough. I'm filing to run for Congress against Nancy Pelosi, and I don't care if she retires or not. But, Randy, this candidate is not running against her from the right. This candidate is running against her from the left.
He's a Bernie Bro tech guy, and he's running against Pelosi, and I can't remember his name. So here's NBC News with the profile on the guy running against Nancy.
With 19 months to go until the midterms, it's a little early to be running for Congress.
My name's Shoykat, by the way. What's your name?
But Shoykat Chakrabarti knows he has
That's his name.
Yeah, that's why you can't remember it.
But Shoykat Chakrabarti...
Shoykat Chakrabarti.
I'm not even going to try.
But Shoykat Chakrabarti...
Now we have to book him just so you can pronounce his name.
Nope.
But Shoykat Chakrabarti knows he has an uphill battle. The message is clear enough.
For most Americans, wages have been stagnant for decades.
Chakrabarti is a populist in the style of Bernie Sanders. The challenge is getting people to know his name, because
it is a challenge.
Yeah, no kidding. Could you imagine what must happen if they're paging him for an upgrade at the airport?
Well, do you want to talk about a member of Congress who has name ID? There is no one more name ID well-known than Nancy Pelosi in her district.
That's true.
Now, will some voters be concerned that she's now in her mid-80s? Maybe, but you go up against the Queen, you best not miss.
Now, wait a minute. She's 85 now. 2 years from now, she'll be 87. And then if she is elected and serves out that term, she'll be 89.
We love everybody.
I fully expect her to be somebody that'll just work in Congress till she dies. She doesn't want to give up power. What, spend time with the grandkids? That's not Nancy.
No, but I think she also wants her daughter to take the seat. And if the election were held today, I don't think the daughter would win. I think Scott Wiener would win, which is bad news for all of us. But she doesn't want him to take that seat. She wants it to go to her daughter, Christine.
Because pretty much everyone knows his opponent's name. Nancy Pelosi.
The House will be in order.
After close to 4 decades and a legendary...
That's like a 10-year-old clip, and you could still hear the dentures.
Loud and clear.
After close to 4 decades and a legendary career in Congress, Pelosi is widely seen in her San Francisco district as a trailblazer and a hero. But she's also turning 86 next year, and she's an emblem of a party facing growing unrest over what many Democrats see as a tepid response to Donald Trump. Pelosi hasn't announced yet whether she's retiring before the midterms, but she did file paperwork required to run again.
People here in San Francisco are very loyal to Nancy Pelosi. She's been an institution here for decades. At the same time, a lot of people think it's time for a change.
I believe that she's really out of touch. I think with the amount of time that she's been in office, the kind of benefits that she's had, you got to give it up to younger people.
Yeah, a lot of them are starting to realize, boy, how did she get so stinking rich?
There is a Twitter profile or Twitter handle, Nancy Pelosi Stock Trades, I think it's called. And you can buy stocks at the same time that Nancy's buying them or selling them at the same time that she's selling them. It is crazy how much money that woman has made on the stock market.
The house doesn't lose, and she's the house.
You got to give it up to younger people.
I think she's very wealthy, and I think she's very old.
Well, you don't think that. That's an empirical fact.
I think she's very wealthy, and I think she's very old.
I think she's very old.
Well, 85? Going to be 86 by Election Day next year?
It's funny. She's what? 4 years older than Biden and way more with it than he was.
Well, that's the thing. You don't really think of her as being that old because she's so more with it than Biden is.
Biden really ruined it for all octogenarians wanting to remain in office.
Well, Dianne Feinstein didn't help.
And I think her time is done.
Chakrabarty hopes that's where he comes in.
Is there some symbolism to dethroning this massive, powerful figure in the Democratic Party for you?
I think there would be, not just for me, but I think for a lot of people. You know,
if you run against Pelosi, do you bring up the whole COVID lockdown salon appointment thing?
I don't know how you run against her in that district because they like her. They voted for her, I don't know how many times in a row, but for decades. And the issue with her now is that she's beyond her best by date. She's no longer in leadership. She's just there. She's this backbencher that won't leave. So I don't know if running a negative campaign against her would help you win an election against her with a San Francisco electorate. Maybe just putting your name on the ballot and saying I'm a socialist is good enough.
I mean, you go back to Dianne Feinstein, not when she died in office, but right before that, in 2018, when she was in her mid-80s and running for re-election. Kevin De Leon, who at that time was the state Senate pro tem, ran against her saying it's time to pass the torch to a new generation, and he got burned.
He lost, but he didn't lose by that much. It was much closer than people thought it would be. I think it was like 54-46 or something like that, which she never was held in the low 50s for a long time, probably since she ran against Michael Huffington in the 1990s. So he didn't beat her, but he came close.
I think there would be, not just for me, but I think for a lot of people. You know, I've got a lot of respect for Nancy Pelosi's career, but I do think she's operating in a different era of politics.
What do you...
There is something to say for the people who are running the country in D.C. will not be alive to see any of the effects of the legislation they pass.
No, but they have the power and they don't want to give it up. And she's mean and she's vicious and she's a gangster. So if you come for her, you better be successful.
We love everybody.
Do you say Democrats should be doing differently now?
I mean, honestly, they just got to be fighting way harder than they do.
What does that even mean?
I don't know.
Pelosi's office didn't respond to our request for comment. But those close to Pelosi say that she fights Trump harder than anyone, and the challenges to her barely register.
It's an endeavor I think most people regret because they get beat pretty bad.
Do you think Pelosi is worried about Chakrabarty's campaign?
I don't think the speaker is aware of his campaign.
And that's probably true.
But Chakrabarty has some experience with scrappy, long-shot campaigns. A former tech entrepreneur and founding engineer at the multi-billion-dollar payment processing company Stripe, Chakrabarty left Silicon Valley.
Okay, so he can self-fund. That's one thing.
Okay, he doesn't have to rely on donations.
Chakrabarty left Silicon Valley to work for Senator Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign in 2016.
Oh, boy, he's a Bernie bro OG.
He's probably going to go on the podcast, too.
I wasn't born to a wealthy or powerful family.
In 2018, he ran the campaign for then-unknown Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Oh, Pelosi don't like her.
Oh, no, she doesn't.
Hey, everyone. My name is Shrikant Chakrabarty.
His strategy involves bypassing big endorsements and going straight to voters.
Both parties have been ignoring kind of the biggest problems facing most people.
What did you learn from helping to get AOC elected?
You know, the main thing I learned is that when there are these moments of change, everything that seems like it was impossible suddenly becomes possible.
Chakrabarty's platform is wildly ambitious.
The reality is there's $100 trillion global green transition happening with or without us.
Oh, boy. I mean, it is San Francisco.
You know what's funny, though, is that as left-wing as San Francisco is, my guess is if left-wing politics goes up against partisan Democratic politics, the partisan Democratic politics wins out.
It involves remaking the entire American economy for workers and the environment.
We've done this plenty of times. We did it in World War II. We did it with the space race. It's a playbook we invented, in fact.
There's a sense that there's been a pretty widespread, in the general public, repudiation of the left, wokeism. How do you navigate that?
I just don't believe that voters are actually in this left versus right dichotomy. I think political elites are. But
well, I mean, you could look at the last election. People did choose to vote on one side or the other.
And Trump won.
But I think voters are about change versus status quo, action versus inaction.
David Noriega joins us tonight. So, David, can this challenger actually pull off a win here? I know.
No, he can't.
I don't even think it's going to be close.
There's probably not a lot of polling for this race just yet, or even in that area. But does he sense he has a chance?
So, look, Tom, the primary here in California isn't until June of 2026. So there's quite some time until this election kicks off. And it's a top two primary system. So Chakrabarty just needs to get second place to proceed to the general. It is too early for polling. But what we do know is that Pelosi has consistently won her seat by roughly 80%.
Okay, that's about as big of a blowout as it gets.
And it's not like she was young in the last election.
No.
She was 84.
Margin, so it would be a tremendous upset. It's a quixotic campaign for sure. Chakrabarty is counting on the fact that the climate has changed enough and will continue to change enough between now and next June for him to pull off that upset. Tom?
80% margins. Yeah, it's going to be hard. Okay, David, we thank you for that report.
There you go. Somebody is trying to run against Nancy Pelosi from the left. Good luck to him.
Yeah, well, guess what? Here's a prediction. They're going to be hosing that guy off the grill of her car.
Quite frankly.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, with the end of the show quickly approaching, if you want to continue listening to us after we sign off at 3, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcast, whether it's the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify. Search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe, and you can download all the podcasts. And we highly recommend you do that, and you load up your phone, because you don't want to be in a situation where you're not getting a radio signal, you're in a dead zone, you got to open up your phone, you forgot to download The John Phillips Show, and you're stuck listening to Gavin's podcast or Pammy Price.
She called me a crime boss.
You know what's interesting, going back to the segment we just did about Nancy Pelosi?
What's that?
What we're going to see is we're going to see a woman who regards herself as a protector of democracy try to find some angle that allows her daughter to replace her over Scott Wiener, who, if she just retired at the end of her term and there was a campaign to see who would replace her, he would almost certainly win and defeat her daughter. What I think she's going to do is she's going to try to find some window, some way to resign and call a special election so that her daughter has a better chance of winning than if she would have just retired at a regularly scheduled election. Or she's going to announce her retirement right before the filing deadline and tell her daughter and no one else, so no one has an opportunity to file. There's going to be some kind of sleight of hand trick that she's going to pull to box out the other legitimate candidates, the other viable candidates, so that her daughter gets it and they don't.
Nepo baby for Congress.
I just have a very strong feeling. You know, when I worked at CNN, and you would see these politicians show up. Some of them showed up with huge entourages. When Debbie Wasserman Schultz was the chair of the Democratic National Committee, and she would show up to CNN, and you'd be on and around the same time as her, and she'd be in the green room. She would show up with, I don't know how many different people. I don't know if they were assistants or aides or security guards or what, but she always showed up with a crew. And then there were other politicians who would just show up by themselves, and they would hang out in the green room. They'd be very approachable, very chatty, that sort of thing. With Pelosi, it was interesting. She would always show up with the daughter. When she goes on a press tour, she shows up with the daughter, and the daughter is the one that works all the people in the press. She's the one that makes friends with them. She's the one who talks to them. She's the one who gives her business card to them. Everywhere Nancy goes, whenever she's meeting someone that she regards as important or regards as someone who could potentially do something for the daughter, she makes it a point to put the daughter in front of them.
It's a little weird.
Well, I don't know if it's weird, but I think that what she's doing is she's trying to grease the skids. And that's how Pelosi got that seat. It was her friend, Sally Burton, who was the congresswoman before Pelosi, who died in office, and literally on her deathbed in the hospital, when Nancy went to visit her, Sally Burton said, "You were the one. You were the one I want to replace me in Congress, and you need to be the one to do it." And it was literally given to her, or I guess the endorsement was given to her, on the woman's deathbed. It really is kind of like one of those mafia movies, isn't it?
Well, with Pelosi, that makes total sense.
We love everybody.
I guess that's true. Let's go to John in Irvine. John, hello.
Hello?
Hi there.
Hi, actually, my name's not John, it's Michael. He got confused. That's why I was a little surprised. Anyway, Nancy Pelosi's father, are you familiar with who he was?
Oh, yeah, Big Tommy D'Alessandro.
Yeah, D'Alessandro. So you know about the whole bribing thing, and he was the reason why it was illegal for people, because he took a bribe and he was taped while doing it and all that stuff. So you know all that. So you're the best. I wasn't sure you knew that or not. So, yeah, I'm from the Baltimore area, so I know all about that. And she's, you know, what do they say, that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree? So,
I guess it's Tommy the Elder was what he went by. Tommy the Elder, and then the son, her brother, was Tommy the Younger, and both of them were mayors of Baltimore.
And the second one was just as bad as the first one, if not worse. And when I realized that Pelosi was his daughter, I just was like, yeah, figures. Anyway, you guys are the best. Thank you very much, and take care of yourselves.
Thank you for the call, sir. All right. The California Department of Insurance, which we know is under fire right now for, well, just about every ethical conflict you can come up with.
Including those fancy tapas dinners in downtown L.A.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
Ricardo, why are you dining with the CEO from Farmers?
Well, now they're being sued by Consumer Watchdog.
The Department of Insurance and Ricardo Lara are being sued by Consumer Watchdog specifically because of a little change in the rules that Ricardo Lara made right before the California wildfires, where he made a change that it used to be if there was a disaster and the FAIR Plan went broke, the FAIR Plan can charge the insurance companies for being broke because the FAIR Plan is just a consortium of the insurance companies. Ricardo Lara changed the rules to say that the insurance companies can then pass that cost on to you, the consumer.
And he ran as a consumer-friendly candidate.
Well, he ran as some kind of candidate. I don't know if consumers were really part of it. It was mostly about how he was the first openly gay statewide official.
At some point, this story is going to be told.
It's going to happen. As Saley's in charge, maybe he'll find something.
It's possible.
How many people do you think are hitting him up being like, okay, you got to go look into this?
Oh, everyone.
All right, for more on Consumer Watchdog suing the Department of Insurance, here is CBS Sacramento.
A fiery debate about California insurance costs. A consumer advocacy group taking legal action now to block a surcharge being passed on to all insurance customers after the deadly LA wildfires.
Your reporter Hunter Sowers is breaking down what's in that lawsuit. Hunter?
I never understood how this made sense to begin with. So insurance companies blew up the FAIR Plan because they kept dropping policies, knowing that they could go on the FAIR Plan, which is a much worse policy. And then the FAIR Plan gets so big that it's definitely going to go broke. And the insurance company said, Ricardo Lara, we want to make sure that we don't have to pay for that either.
You know, things that tend to work are easy to understand, and things that are uncomplicated for no good reason usually don't work.
Yeah, I just spoke to Consumer Watchdog. That's the group filing this lawsuit. They say point blank, a move to pass on a surcharge to customers by the insurance commissioner is an overreach of authority. Let's back up, though, and remind you about why they feel the lawsuit is needed in the first place. In February, Commissioner Ricardo Lara ordered insurance companies in California to give $1 billion to the FAIR Plan, which is typical after a catastrophic event.
Remember how Ricardo Lara kept saying the FAIR Plan wasn't insolvent?
That's right.
Something called an assessment is done to determine the price tag needed to cover significant loss. The FAIR Plan, also known as the insurance of last resort, can put that call out for money out to insurers, and usually insurance companies just pay up. In this case, though, after the devastating LA wildfires, insurance companies who are approved for a surcharge can pass that fee off to its customers.
It's like the insurance companies have turned into a giant HOA.
That's what it sounds like.
Something Consumer Watchdog says is anything but fair.
So basically, homeowners would be entirely responsible for insuring these catastrophic losses of the FAIR Plan. And I do think that's outrageous. The FAIR Plan was created, it was a plan sponsored by the insurance industry and supported by the insurance industry.
If you want to know where the FAIR Plan started, it goes back to the 60s and insurance companies not wanting to write policies in Watts after the riots.
That's when it started?
Yes. And it wasn't very well known because almost nobody was on it because it was made for that very specific purpose of none of the insurance companies wanted to write policies for all the businesses that burned down in the riots. And then a few years ago, they realized, hey, if we start dropping a bunch of policies and then putting it on the FAIR Plan and stressing the FAIR Plan, we can yell and kick and scream and start getting all the rate increases that we want because Ricardo Lara is very easy to break.
Well, it started with Watts, and then it ended up with Lake Arrowhead and Big Bear.
Sponsored by the insurance industry and supported by the insurance industry. And now that they don't like how it's played out, they want to change the rules. And we don't think that's fair. We think it's against the law. And, yeah, people should be outraged.
It's important to know that the lawsuit filed against the FAIR Plan won't impact their ability to pay out claims. Several companies, though, have already applied to pass the cost to customers. Consumer Watchdog.
Of course, just because Ricardo Lara says, well, they have to get my approval first doesn't mean anything. It's just like Ricardo Lara tentatively approving the rate hike for State Farm and then saying, oh, you're going to have a hearing that I'm not even going to bother showing up to because I got to get my butt to Bermuda.
And, of course, if you give everyone the outcome of the hearing before the hearing takes place, what's even the point?
Have already applied to pass the cost to customers. Consumer Watchdog is suing for the commissioner to have to go through proper channels and not allow companies to shift those costs. We reached out to the commissioner about the lawsuit and have not heard back.
What we're having right now, thanks to Ricardo Lara, is there's no real incentive for the insurance companies not to drop everyone and put them on the FAIR Plan.
No, at this point, he's essentially working for the insurance industry. He's not an independent figure. He's not looking out for ratepayers or for homeowners in the state of California. He might as well be getting his W-2 from State Farm.
Oh, that's coming next because there's no way this guy is going to successfully run for another office.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
Oh, we know. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. Let's go to Kingsley in Palm Desert. Kingsley, hello.
Hey, John. How's it going? Love your show.
Thank you.
So Monday, Mayor Karen Bass, who I hope listens to your show, but I seriously doubt, has to release her budget. And this is going to be some, real magic numbers here, I would think, when you're nearly $1 billion in the hole. And things are not looking up, they're looking down. So, as I said to your call screener, I think Monday is like the day you guys are going to win the lotto, because let the games begin with the funny money and all the different people that have been eating at the public trough are going to find out that maybe they don't have quite the seat they've had in the past. What do you think is going to happen on Monday?
Well, she's got to be nervous. She's got to be biting her fingernails at this point. We know that she was the first politician to publicly express frustration and worry about Bill Asaley looking into where all the homeless money was going. So we know as soon as he starts looking into that, she's going to be one of the first ones who gets in trouble. On Monday, she's in a tough spot because politically her poll numbers are awful since the fires happened. She knows it's unlikely that she's going to win re-election if the election were held today, and she hasn't had many good news cycles since the fire started. The block of votes on the council that is behind her are the DSA votes, the Democratic Socialists of America. And they believe in programs like the safety ambassadors, harm reduction, those sorts of things. If she tries to cut any of those worthless programs, they're going to go bonkers, and she's going to lose the one group of people she firmly has in her corner. You look at other aspects of the budget, knowing she's got to trim $1 billion from it. Okay, well, where do we spend money? We spend money on police and fire. Okay, she got skewered for cutting the fire department budget last time around. How in the world do you go cut the fire department budget again after everything that the city has been through and then go to Pacific Palisades and ask them for their vote? You can't do that. How do you cut police in a city that just voted for Prop 36? You can't do that. There are no good options for her. The only thing I think she could do is she could probably try to put some kind of tax increase on the ballot and just try to expand the pot of money that she has to play with and say, okay, we need to increase the fill-in-the-blank fee or fill-in-the-blank tax. We've already seen her do this with tax fees because that doesn't require a vote of the people, and she can jack them up to whatever it is that she wants to jack them up to, which she has already done. But there are no good options for her, and she's going to have to alienate people she's going to depend on for re-election, regardless of whatever it is that she ends up cutting.
No, I think you're right. I think fees are definitely going to be going up. But at some point in there, she's going to have to do more than just keep the fire department and the police department budget neutral, because, I mean, we know that, who was it that came out from the fire department and said we're simply just a homeless transport service? You know, they've got all that equipment sitting there on the lots not being used, can't get fixed. And the police department seems to be woefully understaffed, and they can't even hire anybody. They can't attract the good recruits anymore. And so they're going to have to do something to provide some incentives there for basic services. So what happens now? We wait 3 years to get a street light fixed. We wait 4 years to get a sidewalk fixed.
More like 10.
We pay, yeah. You're right. You know, it's funny because it's true. And now we're stuck with a city that's broken and broke. I got to tell you, I think they'll be lucky if it's only $1 billion in the hole by the time it's all said and done.
Well, we had the police chief on last week when we were on in Long Beach on Friday, and I asked him point blank about the $1 billion budget hole and asked him if he thinks that his budget is going to be cut or if he thinks that he'll be able to protect it and be able to adequately police the city. He said he doesn't think that they're going after his budget, and he's pretty confident of that. Well, if that's true, then you're going to be taking a meat cleaver everywhere else.
Well, and you know, the city's credibility when it comes to the homeless services and all that other, you know, all those other programs, they got no credibility. They're left, none, because they can't find the money and they certainly can't fix any of the problems. But then all the other city services that seem to be falling by the wayside. And on top of all that, the union contracts that they negotiated, I mean, what are you looking at? I think an additional $250 million in union salaries that are in bargaining agreements. They have to do that unless they're going to crack open those agreements and take on the unions. And then I think that's going to alienate that group on the council that you were just talking about.
Yeah, she has a lot of options, and none of them are good. But this is the bed that she made, so now she's got to sleep in it. Thank you for the call. All right, Randy, I think we have time for one more addition to the Crime Blotter.
If the cashier is dummy.
Questions?
And this edition involves something that the Real Housewives are very fond of.
Someone stole a bunch of Botox.
Told ya.
Here's Fox 11.
So it looks like this woman did her homework because she knew exactly when the Botox delivery was arriving.
Must be sweeps. This might be a little too tough for the Botox bandit.
Take a close look at this woman. Even behind the sunglasses, someone is likely to recognize her. Last Thursday morning,
you can recognize her because she's got no wrinkles.
Why doesn't she just go down to Mexico to pick it up like everyone else?
Last Thursday morning, she posed as an employee of Iconic Skin Clinic in La Mirada, just as a UPS driver was making a delivery. Security footage shows the woman walking away with boxes filled with Botox.
She took off with our Botox. It was about $20,000 worth of Botox.
Now, is this for personal use, or is she going to MacArthur Park and offering spa treatments to the meth heads?
I don't know. But when people saw her leaving with the Botox, I think it worked in her advantage because she didn't look guilty. In fact, she had no expression on her face at all.
It was about $20,000 worth of Botox.
Security cameras also captured the getaway vehicle, a dark-colored Chevy truck. Nurse practitioner Jennifer Gonzalez, who co-owns the clinic, reported the theft to authorities.
I hope she never does that to anyone else because it is a business and it's our livelihood and a livelihood of our employees too that we have to pay, and it's just not right.
She and her
vanity is our business, and they're taking that away from us.
If this is the kind of judgment that this woman has, this thief has, it's too bad it wasn't birth control that she stole.
Right.
She and her staff have nicknamed the thief the Botox Bandit.
How clever.
Jennifer says she's learned Botox is a prime target for thieves.
What I've been told is they probably sell it to other, not legit medical spas.
Okay, who is buying black market Botox?
People who operate a spa in their garage.
These are the same people that get those backdoor butt injections that end up going to the hospital.
Oh, yeah, where they put Fix-A-Flat in your ass.
Or on offer up to people who will do Botox out of their house.
If you're going on Facebook Marketplace for someone to Botox you, you have not made good life decisions.
Right after the theft, Jennifer posted on social media the video showing the woman stealing the boxes of Botox. She says some of the comments helped lighten the mood during a tough time, even gave her a laugh.
Some of the funny ones were like, oh, may she have wrinkles forever.
I hear that person's a comedy genius in France.
There you go, Johnny. The Botox Bandit is still on the loose.
That's going to do it for us today, but we'll be back tomorrow at noon for another edition of The John Phillips Show.